Most people think consistency is about how often you post, but the real consistency that your business needs is your messaging. This is Stories Build Businesses, the show that proves your story isn't just something to tell, it's the strategy that builds a business that's uncopyable, unforgettable, and unmistakably you. I'm your host, Megan Wright, story and strategy coach, and today we're diving into something so many entrepreneurs struggle with without even realizing it. We're going to be thinking about why consistent messaging beats consistent posting and what mixed messaging is really costing you. Let's start with the obvious. The advice to post consistently has become a complete cliche online. You see it everywhere, every day. Show up more, stay top of mind, be consistent. But no one actually stops and asks, consistent in what? Because the truth is, you can post 3 times a day and still be inconsistent. You can show up constantly and never actually build recognition or trust or connection. Because if every post sounds like a different version of you and what you do, if the tone changes, if the topics are scattered, if the message wobbles even slightly, your audience isn't building familiarity with you. They're starting from scratch every single time. And you might have felt this too, that sense of, I'm doing the work, I'm showing up, but people still don't really get what it is that I do. Your content feels a bit hit and miss. You're trying to be human and relatable, but the personal stuff isn't really connected to your work. And suddenly you're posting everything except the thing you actually want to be known for. Consistency isn't just about what you're posting. It's making sure that the things you're posting are cohesive so that day to day, people know what you stand for. So often the message people think they're putting out there isn't the message that's being heard or seen or received by their audience. When I was at university, one of my best friends wrote her dissertation on Moby Dick. And even though we were both studying English literature, I hadn't studied that particular book at all, which actually turned out to be perfect because when I was proofreading her dissertation, I could see the gaps. Because I didn't have a pre-existing knowledge of the book, I didn't automatically fill in those gaps. I was able to see them. And that's the thing. She'd left gaps, not because she didn't know what she was doing, but because she did. She was so close to the story that to her, everything had been explained really clearly. She knew what she meant, so her brain filled in the gaps automatically. Me, on the other hand, I had no context. So I walked in with fresh eyes and I saw every missing link instantly. The one thing she couldn't do was read it the way that someone else would, rather than reading it the way that she did. This is exactly what happens with the messaging in your business. Because you're living inside of your work every single day, you know the depth, the nuance, the reasons behind the things you talk about. You know what you meant to say. But often your audience, they don't. They only see what's on the page. And mixed messaging often isn't a lack of clarity, it's a lack of distance. It's not being able to step back and see things with fresh eyes. Most people think their message isn't landing because they're not posting enough, they're not showing enough of themselves, or they need to talk about everything that they do. But actually, the real issue is so much simpler. When your message changes shape too often, people can't recognize you. And recognition is what builds trust. Think about big brands like Apple. At any given moment, they focus on one hero message. In the 1990s, it was the Apple Mac. They wanted everyone to know that they made computers. They had other products, but the Mac was the identity that they were pushing. Then in the noughties, the iPod. They still made Macs, but the iPod became the cultural marketing center. Ads, iPod. Billboards, iPod. Walk into a store, iPod was front and center, and it completely redefined what people associated with Apple. And then in the 2010s, the iPhone. The Mac still existed, the iPod still existed, but the iPhone became the flagship, shaping everything that they did, the narratives, the launches, the keynotes, and the revenue. Even now, the iPhone is still what they advertise the most, because Apple knows that if they tried to talk about everything at the same time, you wouldn't know what to care about. You wouldn't know which product to latch onto. Yet you walk into an Apple store and you'll see MacBooks and AirPods and watches and accessories, the entire ecosystem of what they offer. They offer all of it. but everything is driven by one clear message at a time. Business owners forget this constantly. You think you're being multi-passionate, you think you're showing your depth, but what your audience is seeing, what they experience, is breadth, and it confuses them. You can offer multiple things. You can be capable of many things, but you still need that flagship message, the thing that defines how people recognize you. Creating consistent messaging starts by knowing what the message is that you want to be putting across. What is the thing that you want to be known for? Once you know that, you can tell stories that reinforce that message. You can tell different stories, different angles, but making sure that they all echo the message that you want to be known for. People will start to feel the pattern. Even if they can't quite articulate it, they'll start to feel that consistency. And then the part that most people resist, repeating yourself more than feels comfortable. It used to take 7 touch points for someone to feel confident buying from a business. Now it's somewhere in the 20s. But those 20 touch points, they need to be the same message. 20 touch points with 20 different messages isn't going to make anyone feel confident to buy. 20 touch points that all reinforce the same message will help people to trust you because you'll be seen as reliable. And that's the thing. Consistency isn't repetition for repetition's sake. It's about building recognition and showing reliability. And it's hard because to be consistent with your messaging, you have to let go of the desire to show everything you can do, to choose depth over breadth. It can feel limiting at first, especially if your work is layered and nuanced and full of meaning. But when people know that every time they encounter you, they're going to meet the same person with the same values, the same voice, and the same message, that creates safety. It creates connection, and ultimately, it's what builds businesses that last. So I'd love you to reflect, what is the message that you want to be known for? And where might that message be drifting more than you realize? Because maybe consistency has never been about how often you post, but the reliability with which you build your reputation. I'd love to hear if this episode resonated, so come and tell me over on Instagram at Stories Build Businesses, and make sure to send this to a friend who's been beating themselves up about not posting consistently. See you next time.